Welcome to the show. We hope you have a blast. Thanks for making time for the Dealer Talk podcast. Another business leader, here's a penny for your thoughts. This ain't a regular conversation, baby. This that Dealer Talk. Yeah.
What up? Welcome to another episode of the Dealer Talk podcast. This is your host, Herb Anderson. Thank you for tuning in. Charity, what is going on? How are you?
What is up? Happy podcast day.
Happy podcast day. You know, I'm stoked for today's episode. We're going to be talking to Mr. Steve. Is it Stauning?
I said,
right?
I haven't asked him specifically. Stauning is what I said. We'll ask him.
Stauning.
S-T-A-U-N.
I'm super excited to talk to this dude. So he wrote an article that we're going to reference in the show notes back in 2017 about why Carvana will fail. But there's a whole slew of things that he's talking about in there that I'm just like super excited. So Charity, thanks for finding it and thanks for inviting him and all that good stuff. I'm very, 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 very excited.
Every once in a while, Herb will get these like random text messages for me with like exclamation points. This was one of them. I was like, oh my gosh, you have to read this article.
There's so much to unpack here. And it's not so much that he predicted what was going to happen, because it's not, I mean, obviously the COVID thing is really what ramped them up and at the same time brought them down.
But that's why it's so cool, is because he had no idea that COVID was going to happen. And it Sorry, I interrupted you. Keep going.
I'm excited. I'm just excited to see how much of his perspective has changed, if anything. And then he talks there about the peer-to-peer market, which I definitely want to have a conversation about that one, because I think that there's just a lot to unpack. So,
yes,
you should all be
excited.
As excited as we are. So, you know what? We're so excited. We're going to get into it.
Super excited
now. No more wait. Steve, welcome to the show, sir. How you doing?
All right, good.
Thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it. We kick things off with an intro, so tell us about you.
Oh, well, see, now you should have sent me something in advance. I'm not prepared to talk about me. So I'm Steve Stauning. I've been in the car business for a number of years. I've been consulting and training with dealers, dealer groups, and OEMs since 2009. Prior to that, I was e-commerce director for the Asbury Automotive Group.
So right now, currently you consult?
Yes. So I have a number of regular clients, mostly consulting on the sales process, but also service processes and also digital marketing.
So I was kind of prefacing our conversation with the article that you wrote back in 2017. And I just kind of wanted to start with that. Again, for those who haven't read it, we do have a link in the show notes, so go check it out so you can get some context. But 50,000 view, Steve, has your perspective changed from when you wrote that article? How did COVID impact that, if so, or do you still hold to the same theories?
Yeah, I mean, math doesn't lie, and that was always their problem. Back then, I think the article. I think dealers are taking home about $132 net profit from every used car unit that they sold, and that was NADA data back then. I think the only thing that's changed is I'm really surprised that they didn't take better advantage of, the stimulus checks that went out there and the market as it changed and the pricing, and we're now getting out of the best used car market in the history of automotive. I mean, there hasn't ever been a better used car market than there was the last 28 months or so. And Carvana failed to make money during those 28 months. Carvana failed to truly improve. I mean, I've done my best to dig through their financials, and in full disclosure, I've made money on the stock going up and made money on the stock going down. But they have so many related third-party transactions that I can't really tell why they can't take money to the bottom line. But as the article stated, there were no efficiencies to pull out of used car sales in America. I mean, it is in my opinion and experience, the used car market in America is the most efficient market there is. There are tens of thousands of buyers. There are millions of sellers, and these come together in millions of transactions every year in auction, B2B, B2C, C2C. I mean, this wasn't books, that Amazon was able to create some efficiencies around, right? Where a bookstore had to have 3 copies of, 100,000 different books. Amazon could just put them in a warehouse and ship them cheaply. And I use Amazon because Carvana was called the Amazon of car dealers and has been a lot of times over the last 6 years or so. But Amazon benefited from no sales tax initially, and your local bookseller or Ace Hardware didn't have that advantage, and so there was nothing that Carvana could take advantage of. They had to go by the same laws in every state that they did business in that required broker licenses or dealer licenses in every state. It's just not the same kind of market as other goods. There's a reason Amazon never got into selling cars, used or new. And it's a tough business to break into.
So going back to what you just said right now about the states and the regulation and all that stuff, do you think that it's even possible to achieve the level that they were aiming for without having like this incredible DMV network connection? Because it's done differently in different states and all these things. I mean, that's why they have all these title problems. What are your thoughts on that aspect of it alone?
Yeah, I mean, the title problems, that's of their own making. Every dealer in America every dealer I know in America sells and buys across state lines. And so, generally it's only 3 other states that I deal with, right? I happen to live in North Idaho. And so the dealers here, they deal with Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, maybe Wyoming, maybe occasionally Utah, but they deal across, they buy in Canada.
Utah.
What's that?
Charity lives in Utah.
I was thinking they only deal with Utah when you guys steal our customers.
But the point is that your local mom and pop dealer has figured out a way to make the title work. The title changes and acquiring titles and titling vehicles and registering vehicles. And I think Carvana just cut corners there that they didn't need to cut or shouldn't have cut. So that that's part of their issues with regulation and where they're not able to comply. And it's not as if the system, it's not like used cars are not like the franchise dealer system, the new car system, where state laws protect the local dealers, right? Just like franchise laws can protect the local McDonald's owner from McDonald's Corporation. And these state franchise laws keep OEMs at arm's length, but there's nothing to stop someone from creating a nationwide network of used car sellers that, used car locations that sell across state lines. And in fact, dealers have been doing it for a long time. CarMax, has been very successful. Lithia Motors has their driveway division. They've been very successful. Sonic has Echo Park. But Carvana, I don't think Carvana was ever built. I don't want to use hyperbole here, but I don't think they were ever built to make money. I think they were built to sell stock. And, I don't know that that's in their secret corporate charter or anything like that, but it was never, the math on used cars just doesn't, there's not those efficiencies, and they built in their own inefficiencies. Their initial plan was, and what they would deliver vehicles 500 miles away without a charge. And, they built these glass towers that some people say those were silly. I think those were a pretty good marketing ploy, because every time they built a glass tower, every news station in the city would cover it. They'd get, the free marketing, the free local advertising. But car dealers may have some inefficiencies with the salesperson and the cost of that, but they also don't have the inefficiencies of having to get all of their inventory from, or virtually all of their inventory from outside their trade-ins. And, in Carvana, it was just, I tried to make it pencil, and it just wasn't going to. And I think the postmortem for Carvana, because I think the Carvana brand will be around a long time after the shareholders are wiped out.
You think
I believe
bankruptcy?
they will be. I think the postmortem. Yeah, I don't. We're looking at, gosh, we'll hear about it. Their earnings, I think, are next week. But they're approaching $8 billion in debt in a rising interest rate environment. I don't know that they could borrow anymore because they already have a lot of senior debt holders, and so the next loans that they get those people won't be senior. I think the bonds are trading at about 56 cents on the dollar right now. So that means that the bond market is saying there's a real chance of default on these bonds, and those bonds are going to get paid before anybody. And other than Ally getting the inventory that they've loaned on. And so I think bankruptcy is the only way forward. But post bankruptcy, I see Carvana with car lots like CarMax, and continuing to beat the dealer, the traditional dealer down in their marketing. I think that plays with consumers, and but the data is pretty clear. About 9 out of 10 buyers, even today, say that the test drive was the most influential resource in their decision. And so even giving me a 7-day free, test drive, there's always complications.
Well, I always think that that's funny when people, like with Amazon, well, you can try it for 7 days and then you can send it back. And then I would love to see the statistics on the average amount of people who actually send things back, or they're like, oh, well, it was $27. It's like not worth it to just send it back. I think that logic plays out in the same way on a larger scale with that kind of, oh, if I turn it back in, then I have to deal with all of this stuff, or I could just keep the car. It wasn't like it was that bad.
Right. And think about things that would that would turn you off in a test drive, right? You'd be turned off by, the way the lumbar felt, or the way the seatbelt came across your body, or the way your hands felt on the steering wheel, or the dash, the way it's laid out, things like that you might say, yeah, this isn't the car for me, and move on. Major issues. But if I got a car from Carvana and had major issue, yeah, I'm sending it back, no problem. But if the seat's a little uncomfortable, you're right. I mean, why would I? It's a big hassle, and so I think people end up accepting things that they're not completely happy with.
I always said that it was too soon to determine that, because it's not whether a customer will buy the car once. I think the novelty of it is attractive enough to get people to use it, just to see what that experience is like. But is that person going to buy all their cars from that point forward through that process? Because that's really what determines success, right? If I do it once and never do it again, how successful is it really?
Right.
So
yeah, and that was one of the inefficiencies I pointed out about Carvana is, without physical locations that are on a major, motor mile, they're out of people's consideration set.
Well, and then if they make the entire process easier for the customer, and then that goes back to the titling. And Herb and I talked about this on a different episode, but I think if you make it ridiculously convenient, then people go back to it over and over again. Like we were just talking about buy here, pay here. People go back to buy here, pay here because it's what they know, it's what they're comfortable with, not because they necessarily need it. Carvana could have played into that really well, but then they made it so much more difficult with the titling issues, and then they just made customers angry, and then they got that reputation, and then people aren't going to come back to you.
That's a great point. And that, if you consider Carvana versus, say, Zappos, and I hate to, again, compare them to anything Amazon, but, Zappos was the first one that no, you don't like the shoes, send them back, and just made it so stupidly easy that people would constantly buy things that, if you had asked me before Zappos, would you ever buy a pair of shoes online? I would say, well, no way. I got to try them on. Right. And yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because it does have to be so stupidly easy and so convenient that, yeah, that's the only way I'll come back. Loyalty in automotive has really, it was declining pre-pandemic, but the chip shortages took people who were a lifelong Silverado buyer and they're driving a Ram or an F-150 or vice versa. And it really shook up the loyalty in automotive, but that doesn't necessarily play into Carvana's benefit, because Carvana is going to deal with that same sort of issue, right? Because there'll be a new Carvana when I'm ready to buy in 2 years, and every dealer in America now you can buy online. So,
well, yeah, well, and let's talk about that, because I'm curious about your perspective. So, I started as on the service side, so I made it all the way to service manager before I went on to the vendor side of things, and let's see, I left the store in 2008. So at that time, we were selling cars online. Like, it wasn't like we weren't doing these things. I think the problem, and not even the problem, but dealers have never promoted that service because they don't want to. They want the customer to come in. But if any dealer can go out there and promote, like, buy online, you know what I mean? Like, we have all these widgets, like you mentioned in your article back then, like the AutoFis and the Roadsters or whatever, that can allow the customer to do their transaction online, right? The problem with those widgets is that they claim to be a Carvana-esque type of a deal, and they're not, because they don't deliver the customer to you, to your house. But you can do everything else on there, and then you just ship the car to the customer. That's not new. Like, dealers have been doing that for years, but they don't want to promote that message. They don't spend money advertising that. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I don't think they should spend a lot to advertise that, other than how it affects the local market. I think Rick Reichert early on with the AutoFi tool did a great job with telling his market that you can buy from your couch or something like that, and the ads had somebody in their pajamas, and 100% transparent, 100% online, all of this, and that message actually drove walk-ins, because, this is somebody I can trust, right? I could buy 100% online. Of course, I don't want to do that, but I know they're 100% transparent, and so I can go on down there. And I think that's the extent of it. The thing that Carvana sort of screwed up, a lot of people have been writing their obituary and talking about all these things we learned from Carvana. We didn't learn anything from Carvana. All of the things that they allege that we learned, we've already known, and things like buying online. I mean, shoot, eBay Motors has been doing it for more than 20 years. You could buy 100% online, but what Carvana did to the industry was it accelerated this rush to online buying, and that's, I think, unfortunate, because I think the OEMs, most of them, put way too much focus in online buying with their digital retailing versus using digital retailing to create a great customer experience in store. Where I've seen real successes with digital retailing, it's where they have a tab, the salesperson or product specialist has a tablet to walk the customer through, can turn the tablet around, hand it to the customer, let them self-select F&I add-ons, self-select, accessories for their vehicle, things like that. And just a quicker process in general. And, we were already going there. The problem with Carvana, and I think, a lot to do with the pandemic, is that everybody rushed to push the focus to 100% online buying, which appeals to a small percent of people, but not enough.
Yeah, that's the other thing that I kind of mentioned here. If the consumers really wanted that, we would have woke up during COVID and 50% of the business was being done that way. It's not like it would have been like a gradual, no, like literally 50% of the business overnight would have been done that way.
Yep. And by the way, and my dealers who sold a lot, quote unquote, a lot online during COVID, those were all just out of state deals. They happened to be the only dealer with that new Charger or that
Mm-hmm.
the only dealer with that new Ford Explorer. And maybe they were just a few thousand above MSRP, and so I'm willing to go get it, 500 miles or 1,000 miles away because of that. But when inventory normalizes,
Well, and that's a really good point, because a lot of times when you're talking to customers and I came up through business development, so most of my conversations with customers are on the phone, but the conversation is, hey, I'm not around here, but you've got exactly what I want. Color, leather, all of the things, but there's one just like it that doesn't have the color that I want that's down here at the dealership. So I'm going to go test drive that one and decide if it's what I want. And anybody knows that it's game over as soon as they get in front of a good sales guy. It's the same thing. If there's anything even remotely close to what you want nearby versus any inconvenience of getting it shipped to yourself, any inconvenience at all. It has to be easier than walking into the dealership next door.
Yeah, but you're already at severe disadvantage because shipping time. You're not going to have that car immediately. It's going to take you, I don't know, 7 days or so to get it. And by that point, it's like, am I really going to sit here and wait 7 days to get my new car?
Well, so here's another, Herb and I were talking, I want these headphones really bad. And I went down to the Best Buy and they can get them for me in a week, or I can go on Amazon and get them in 2 days. Way more convenient. Same price, is just more convenient.
So, Steve, I was going to say, where do you see Vroom in all of this? Because nobody's talking about them.
Yeah, Vroom has been a disappointment for me. They bought Texas Direct Auto years ago, and Texas Direct Auto was the biggest eBay seller. That's where they started. I think they eventually got up to 3,000 cars a month. I know it was more than 2,500 a month from a single location. They bought the old Champion Chevrolet in the Houston area, where they might have had, 500 cars on the ground at any one time, maybe 1,000. And I really thought Vroom bought them for their excellent recon procedures, right? They could get a car through recon faster than anybody. And their in-store processes that, was a one-price store, which everybody should be unused. It's silly to negotiate unused today. But it's a one-price store that has really solid processes that I don't know what the average salesperson, and they're not really salespeople, but the average salesperson sells a month, but I think it's close to 60. I don't know what it is today, but pre-Vroom. And it just, looking at their results quarter after quarter, they're just chasing Carvana, and it's I just don't think they're going to stick around, and it's too bad because I think the right and it's not sexy to Wall Street, but I think the right mix is a Carvana or Vroom, Shift, whoever, with a big physical location so people are willing to drive to, right? One big one in Denver, one big one in Salt Lake, one big one in Seattle area, things like that. And 600, 700 units on the ground, which is very CarMax, but also service, but the basic services, right? And you need service there because the recon is, you can have huge recon facilities at the ADESA plants that you bought,
right?
But what are you going to do? You're going to ship everything to ADESA and then ship everything back, and you're going to add 4 days minimum to the recon to send it all in one centralized location. It's just not going to work. Everything should be done regionally, and 4 or 5 regional recon centers minimum. I think that's the next model. And if I was running the new Carvana, that's the direction I'd take it.
So you said something interesting that I wanted to expand on, and you talked about. So you think Carvana dealerships post bankruptcy would be the way to go?
Yeah, because as I wrote in some article, in the words of Dr. Alan Grant, T-Rex doesn't want to be fed. T-Rex wants to hunt. And Carvana sold a lot of cars but most of them were special finance customers. People don't like the car buying process, but they love the car shopping process.
Yeah, that's true.
And, you looking at different things, seeing them side by side, all of that. And yeah, that's where I think, people can poke at CarMax all they want. And right now, used cars are a little tough. I don't know if you saw AutoNation's results that came out this morning, but fourth quarter AutoNation, and I'm going to be wrong on the exact numbers, but new car gross was over $5,000, almost $6,000. Used car gross, I think, was about $1,800, and which is just wacky if you think pre-pandemic, right? Those new car gross was negative in some instances,
exactly.
but used car gross was probably around 1,800, probably where it is now. And I think that's where Carvana is going to struggle this year. Stock price is probably as high as it's going to be this year, but they're not going to go out of business, and they're going to manage through that period. And when new car inventory is normalized, then that means used cars will begin to normalize, and CarMax will go back to being really efficient. Not sexy, but making money on every deal and getting great reviews.
What about ADESA? How does ADESA play into all this? Do you think that was a smart move or a dumb move?
Yeah,
I'd say it's the dumbest, smartest thing that Carvana did.
So that's probably the way to put it. They, it feels like, and I don't know, but it feels like they did it to show Wall Street how they're going to gain all these efficiencies that they're never going to gain, right? And short of saving $600 auction fee or whatever the auction fee is, there are no real efficiencies. The ADESA facility, there's a reason KAR was getting out of the physical auction business. It's not profitable compared to all the online options. Why does a dealer need to take their vehicle to a physical auction? They can still deal with Manheim by keeping it at their dealership, and it's not shipped to a Manheim. It's shipped from dealer to dealer. But for them to be so tone deaf to not realize there aren't any dealers, any smart dealers, who are going to send their vehicles to an ADESA auction if it's owned by Carvana. It's just not going to happen, right? I mean, I'm only going to do it because I happen to be next door to an ADESA auction, or I'm desperate. And then on top of that, we watch Carvana at the auctions now, and where are they buying and selling all of their, where are they selling all of their auction vehicles? Manheim. Where are they buying all their auction vehicles? Manheim. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what I'm seeing. And so I don't know why they bought ADESA. I really don't. I scratch my head. So.
Yeah.
Now more than ever, businesses need more efficient sales. That's why thousands of dealerships trust 4Eyes to help with things like automated inventory email updates and ensuring all of your leads get into the CRM. To try 4Eyes for free, visit 4eyes.io/dealertalk. That's 4eyes.io/dealertalk.
I think there was two things. I think they were thinking logistics. I think their logistics was the main push there. And I also think that they thought that I don't know if they thought it this way through, but if I was, running it, I would have thought about the assets that come with it. You know what I mean? Because there's something there. There's something tangible.
Is it $3 billion of tangible though?
And that's the thing, right? That's what I don't understand. You brought up a great point that I don't hear a lot of people talking about, and that's that one of the things that COVID has done for the auction process is it taught people how to buy online. Whereas you had a lot of people in the industry that were used to going to the auction and being there physically, and they just weren't adapting to the online version. Everybody now is an expert. Well, I don't want to say an expert, but everybody now is buying cars online, and they're comfortable buying cars online, and they were forced to do that. And so I think that's been one of the major shifts. That's a pre or post COVID I don't know, advantaged, in my opinion, to the industry. So, or positive rather. So, but yeah, man, I don't know. That was a weird deal for sure. The other thing that comes to mind with that is, I mean, you talked about their debt ratio. Mathematically speaking, man, it doesn't make sense. Like, I don't understand how they haven't filed already. You know what I mean? Like, seriously, like, how are they, what's the play here? I don't get it.
Yeah. So they're selling off everything that they have of value to pay operating expenses. They've laid off a couple thousand, few thousand folks at least. But I think we're going to find in next week's earnings, and it's just a guess, that they still have negative free cash flow, meaning that they're not even making enough money to pay expenses today. Everything's continued to be negative. I'm not talking about being profitable. I'm talking about making enough money to have positive
Cover
cash
expenses.
flow. Yeah, and so I don't know. I've dug through their financials, and they claim to have, I think, $2 billion in assets that they can sell. I guess they're talking about the ADESA locations, so they could do a sale leaseback on that. The problem with that, and they've done the sale leaseback on all of their towers. They don't own any of those towers anymore, and haven't for as long as I know. The problem with the sale leaseback today is who's the buyer of the ADESA locations,
right?
And what are they thinking they're going to do with them when Carvana goes away? Because that's what they have to think about. It's the value of the ADESA locations is not how much can I lease them back to Carvana for, because I can't count on Carvana still being around in a year. Who the heck's going to pay me to lease these?
Take that risk. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, these are brownfields almost. I mean, I can't imagine they're not EPA. The EPA hasn't shut down a lot of those sites. The ones that I'm familiar with just seem terrible from an environmental standpoint. And so again, I mean, this is not a Walmart store that goes out of business in the suburbs of Houston or something. These are dirty car facilities that have been reconning vehicles for years, painting, oil. I mean, just all of that stuff that I'd never want to deal with.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you foresee, or can you talk about easy takeover? Were there anybody, like, I was thinking like maybe an AutoNation or a Lithia? Do you think that they would try to get that business? Is it worth it? Is there a play there for them?
So the rumor that I heard from someone who seems to have insight was that eBay was sniffing around, and that's why Carvana created their poison pill that doesn't allow anybody to get if you get more than 5% of the stock now, if you don't already have more than 5% and you get more than 5%, and I'm explaining it poorly. People need to go read for themselves, but that you cannot take the tax loss carryover. And so what that does, in effect, is stop someone from coming in and buying up more than 5% of the shares, kicking out the existing management team and trying to take it over. Pre-bankruptcy, I don't think it makes sense for anybody to look at them, because you're gonna gobble up $7.4 billion minimum in debt, that you're going to be servicing. What could you do if you went out and borrowed $7.4 billion? I mean, it wouldn't cost you a third of that to create what Carvana is today. And you might say, well, Steve, you don't have the name recognition. Well, Carvana only has, their name recognition is only as good as the last time I saw a Carvana commercial or see a Carvana ad. Mm-hmm. And as Charity Ann has said, that their name recognition doesn't mean a lot, because people are. Have you read the reviews? Right. So, it would just seem odd to me that anybody would take that debt on. I wrote another article about Carvana back 6 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, that I wrote that they're worth every bit of $2 billion. And I gave the math to defend why they're worth $2 billion. At the time, they were worth the market cap was $6 billion. And of course, now today, the market cap, I don't know what it was today, but it's well below $2 billion. And that includes with the ADESA purchase. So technically, they should be worth every bit of $4 billion, right? But they're not worth $7.4 billion. That's for sure. No, and that's the debt you'd have to eat. So,
yeah, it's interesting. I kind of put a prediction out there about 3 weeks ago saying that I foresaw when their next quarterlies come out that they're going to announce it, that it's just not. I don't know, man. I don't see it. I don't see how they're gonna, because they can't borrow money. They can't sell assets to make up the difference. So it's just the next logical step. I think
it is the unknown. The unknown are the related third-party transactions. So it's no secret that the CEO's father, who's also the biggest shareholder of Carvana, Ernie Garcia II, owns Drive Time. That was the former Ugly Duckling. Ugly Duckling was taken into bankruptcy. Ernie Garcia bought it up for pennies on the dollar. And Drive Time has been buying and selling cars from Carvana from the very beginning. Drive Time, from my understanding, does the recon or most of the recon for Carvana. And so Carvana pays Drive Time for those services. I think Carvana can keep going for as long as those third-party transactions are profitable to the other related third parties. Because, if I can buy and sell and I'm making money over here, right? We'll try to, maybe I'll buy and sell. Maybe I'll buy for a little higher from you, Carvana, and sell to you a little cheaper, Carvana, because I want you to keep going, right? Because it's still profitable for me. The minute those third-party transactions are no longer profitable for the third parties, I think that's when the chapter 7 or 11 or whatever it is comes out.
That they're going to do, yeah. That's a good point that you bring up the Drive Time connection there, because no matter what, these both of the Garcias are going to walk away with cash. Right?
Oh yeah, they're already successful. Yeah, that's somebody I heard. Hey, if they each have more than a couple $1 billion, I believe, from that they've already taken off the table from this, and so. Yeah, somebody called him a failure on LinkedIn or something, and I wrote back to them. I said, well,
yeah, I like to fail that way too, man.
Yeah, that's right. If I could fail and take away $2 billion, yes,
I volunteer.
Yes. They've been extremely successful. That was, and I don't think that was ever the question. They had very little at risk, and Wall Street was pre-pandemic was overvaluing them. Adam Jonas, one of the craziest analysts, Morgan Stanley analysts, he had a $450 price target on Carvana at some point. They had still never turned a dime of profit. And this is a guy that's supposed to be an analyst in automotive. So yeah, and again, because I can't quite understand all their financials, I'd argue that if we got a forensic accountant in there, we'd find out they didn't make money that quarter either. Yeah, not on a GAAP basis.
Kind of moving things along here, there is another topic that I wanted to cover with you, and this is one that I personally am dying to get your perspective on, and that is peer-to-peer. Like, let me expand on that a little bit. Yes, there's a bunch of peer-to-peer websites out there, but they're awful. The experience is terrible. Don't you think that there's room for somebody that's not focused on solving the issue? Because to your point, I agree with you that the market's already probably as efficient as it's going to get. But don't you think that there's opportunity for somebody to offer a peer-to-peer experience that's superior and therefore be able to win on that? Because still, the math is 45% or so of all transactions happen consumer to consumer. But where do they go to do this? You know what I mean? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So you bring up a great point, because that used to be eBay, and then that doesn't get enough traffic, and so unless I have a really cool classic car, I'm not going to be able to sell it on eBay. Right. Then it was Craigslist, and frankly, I don't want to be killed, and so now I'm not going to sell my car on Craigslist. Plus Craigslist now charges $5, and that's too much for some people to list their car. So then it moved to Marketplace, and the latest from people trying to sell on Marketplace is
The spam amount
unbelievably
that you
bad.
get.
Oh,
Yeah.
they don't want to sell anything on Marketplace, especially a car.
Mm.
And then, people are so lazy. And I'm not talking about the seller now. Now I'm talking about the buyer. I don't know if you've ever listened to anything on Marketplace or tried to buy on Marketplace, because I guess, there's sellers that are lazy. People don't respond, right? I mean, we get on dealers for taking more than an hour to respond to a lead. How about responding to, I want to buy your car within a week?
Yeah, right.
Or, is it still available? And I respond right away, yes. And then the guy ghosts me for the next 2 weeks, and then is mad because I didn't hold it for him or something. So you're right. It's a crappy consumer experience. I see value there, but I remember Beepi, right there in that article I wrote about. They were going to be peer to peer. They went through $150 million.
But they weren't
before they went bankrupt.
When I read that, I was a little. My recollection of Beepi was that they were doing subscription, and it was like swap a lease and stuff like that. Or was that after?
Nah, in the end, end, when they realized they couldn't do anything right with their other early stuff, but so they would facilitate the sale between the buyer and the seller. The problem is that the buyer had a 7-day or 9-day guarantee or whatever. And so just logistically, think about that. I'm going to go buy the vehicle from this guy. Well, actually, I'm never going to take ownership as Beepi, but then I'm going to sell it to this guy. But this guy has 9 days or 7 days to tell me he doesn't want it. Well, oops, the original seller doesn't want it back. It didn't pencil out. I think the peer-to-peer could work if it were on a Car Gurus, Cars.com, Auto Trader type thing, but it would require that used car classified to become brokers and to do all of the heavy lifting that it takes to benefit between the peer-to-peer, finding insurance.
Imagine a peer-to-peer where it's not focused on we're not trying to solve the issue in the market. What we're trying to do is facilitate the experience for people who want to sell directly to consumer, right? So I don't know, you get your photos and videos and stuff from the customer, and then you yourself, your company, what it does all the marketing for you, and it makes it like pretty or whatever, and the customer never touches anything, and then they post the ad or something like that, where it's more focused on the experience.
Yeah, and CarLotz, LOTZ, did that. And I don't know if they're still around. I think they might have gotten bought up by Shift or Vroom or one of them. But they were basically where you could park, park your car at the gas station with a for sale sign on it thing. But they would take a % of the sale. The car was posted at CarLotz. I don't know if you could still drive it around. There was never a CarLotz in my market, so I never really did a complete deep dive on them. I think there's money to be made there. I think the problem is that if you're looking to, go the venture capital route, those guys want Carvana-like returns with their investment, and I just don't. Again, I don't know that there's enough efficiencies to squeeze out. To get the VCs excited. It doesn't mean you couldn't, and if they got in and got out at the right times, the VCs could make money, just like many of them did with Carvana, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah, man, I don't know. I think that's an area that is very interesting to me, because I see a tremendous amount of deficiencies with the available platforms today. And I think that to your point in your article, if you're trying to get efficiencies, you're probably maybe during COVID, but that's not a realistic state of existing. And when things normalizes, you're going to be back to the same profitability issues and how much more efficient can you get. But certainly, I mean, there's no question in my mind that on the experience side of things, what's out there for peer-to-peer is just awful.
Yeah, so, it's terrible.
Yeah. It'd be exciting to see how things evolve, but time will tell. Steve, thank you so much for doing this, man. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed your article and a lot of your perspectives, and the conversation has been great. There is one question that we ask everybody that comes on the show. But before I ask you that, I had one last question for you regarding this whole Carvana and this whole experience. Okay. So I'm not a big believer that consumers are ready to transact 100% online yet. I'm 40 and I've interviewed my group of friends for years now on this topic, and I've yet want to have one person in my age group, in my circle, tell me that they would want to buy that car online. Not one person. Well, I digress. Last year, one person, but they bought a luxury car, and that's kind of like of a different, so a Ferrari. So it's a kind of a different experience. But other than that, not a single person has ever expressed, oh yeah, I want to do that. But I believe that it's the future.
I'm going to interrupt your question. Okay.
What?
Finish, and then I have a question.
Okay. So, dude, you make me lose my train of thought. So, but I do believe it's the future. I think eventually we will get there. I think that my kids' generation will, because they grew up in the Amazon age and everything's done online and press the button and get the stuff. How do you think how we're going to get from where we are today to there? And if we do, and everybody's selling the car online, like every dealership, then what's the advantage there? Is it even worth it at that point?
Well, I mean, I believe it is, because the race to the bottom can only go so far, right? And so we'll get price stabilization at some point, because if I'm the one that's always selling below my cost, right? And there are those folks, pre-COVID that were doing that. They were making it up in getting trades. They were making it up in finance. They were making it up in service. Yeah. And in the box. But if it's online and the person doesn't have a trade, and the person is going to pay cash, right? I can't continue to sell below cost. So that it'll find its own level. So I'm not concerned about that. When we get there is another story. CDK puts the number at 9% that bought fully online in 2021. And so, here's to your point, why didn't 50%, right, buy online? The millennials now make up the plurality of car buyers. Gen Zs are buying cars now as well. They're of that age. And so the fact that we're not in above double digits today tells me that I don't know, if we ever will get to double digits, but get to 51%. Let's say most of the cars sold 100% online.
Right.
Because again, the shopping experience is, some people kind of enjoy that. And, we've all had, go ahead.
Which goes to my question. Because we talk about 100% online. So you've got one friend that bought a Ferrari online. Did they buy it? Did they have somebody go look at the car for them? Or did they just sight unseen, I'll pick that one, click the button and have it delivered to me?
Yeah,
because I think that's a crucial... He did. He bought it just without I think seeing it.
People that buy luxury cars are a different breed. Like
But my point is that 100% online implies that you just pushed a button and the car shows up. There was no, I'm going to have a virtual experience where I do a virtual test drive. There's going to be a point at which you experience that vehicle, the specific vehicle. And that's to Steve's point, that's what customers want. They want to be able to experience the vehicle before they just click a button and buy it, and that is the nuance I think that we miss a lot of times, where we just want to be able to send them the car and be like, hey, peace, see ya, have a great day. But they want to be able to touch it and feel it. And if they can't touch it and feel it, then they want somebody that they trust to go out and touch it and feel it and then tell them it was worth it. And if they can't do that, then you get like the VR experience. But all of those things are them experiencing the vehicle before they transact. And that nuance, I think, that's the part where I think that we fail to deliver with all of our online retailing tools and everything. That part right there is the part that we're failing to deliver on.
And we never will be able to do that 100% virtually, because even if it's
right.
a virtual
and
test
that's
drive,
why
you're not driving the car. Like you're not,
and that's why you're not going to
experiencing it in
get
real life.
people at 51% purchasing vehicles online 100%, because they can't. If you can't offer that, then.
And I see a future, probably long after I'm gone, but 20, what are new car sales going to look like in 20 years? You can talk about 5, but think about 20. It feels to me like we'll have, it'll feel like the auto show, where it'll be one location, maybe a dead mall, because who's going to need them in 20 years? And one of every make and model, new car make and model, is in this mall. I don't get to test drive, just like if I go to a Tesla store, right? I don't get to test drive, but I get to sit in them. I get to learn all about them. There's some interactive displays and things. There are people who can explain things to me, and then I can order it from there. And depending on my zip code, that local dealer will be the one that delivers it to me and services and all that for me. So I mean, I could see that.
I experienced something like that. I was in Turkey last year for business and vacation, and I did a speaking sort of a deal at a group of Fiat dealers. And I walked through this dealership where the conference was at, and there was no used cars. And I was like, dude, this is weird. And they only had, it was a boutique style, only new cars, no used cars. They close at 4:00 every day. People come in just to like look at brochures or ask questions about the cars, and that's it. That's how they do their deal, right? And the cars are ordered online, and you choose a location where you want to pick it up, and they just send you the car. So, and the thing that got my attention about that was like the same guys that are making those decisions in other parts of the world are the same guys that are making the decisions for America, right? So eventually that stuff's going to bleed into the way that things are structured here. How long will that take? I don't know, but
but I think that you're missing car culture. So one of my really, really good friends is from South Africa, and she is absolutely fascinated with the relationship between cars and Americans. And we don't want to, it's unless they're all as like an iPhone and you know what you're getting, no matter if you order it online or not, because they're all the same thing. We want to be able to like have a relationship with our vehicle. We want to be able to have an emotional attachment to it. And that means that we want more than just going in and picking one out and driving away. And I mean, even to break down my own iPhone thing, we still have an emotional relationship with our iPhones, and Apple plays off that all the time when they have their once a year conference that we all wait for so we can hear about what the new cool thing is. Those are all emotional reactions. You can't take that away.
But you're still getting
in
that
the American culture at all. I don't think
you're getting that.
You
on
can't
the new
sterilize
side of the
that.
experience. But you're not. You're getting that on the new side of the experience. It's the used car portion where that plays differently. But a new car is a new car.
And I would, I buy into the relationship Americans and their cars until I go to a Walmart parking lot. And I mean, there is no way that more than 1 out of 10 has a relationship with their car, because 9 out of 10 of those cars are get me from point A to point B. And I'm not talking about broken down. I'm talking about a 7-year-old minivan with 120,000 miles on it. There ain't no relationship with that car, right?
Yeah.
And have you noticed every midsize SUV, take the badging off every midsize SUV made in the last 10 years. And I would challenge you to tell me, forget the year it's made. Just tell me what it is. Yeah, tell me what the make is.
Right.
You don't even have to try to pick the model. Give me the make. But gosh, could you imagine being able to go year, make, model, right? We can look at a 64 Buick Skylark and say, that's a 64 Buick Skylark, right? And it's different from the 65 because this, and this, right? But, no offense to Chevy, I'll just pick on them, but a 2019 Chevy Equinox, describe it. Yeah. And tell me what's different between the 2018 and 2020 Equinox and that. So,
Steve, again, thank you so much for doing this, man. We really, really appreciate it. There is one question that we ask everybody that comes on the show, and that question is, where do you see the automotive industry headed in the next 5 years, and why?
I think we're going to see we're going to have a come to Jesus meeting with the OEMs and electric vehicles. They're driving it a little faster than I think the market will be able to adapt to it. There's no doubt electric vehicles are the future, but there's also this desire by the OEMs to sell directly to consumers, to hold to one price on these, and where that goes with state dealer franchise laws is going to be interesting. I don't think the market is going to be much different in 5 years than it is today, from the standpoint of, we'll continue to see some consolidation. But, assuming we get a recession in the second half of this year and it's a prolonged recession, we may see fewer players just like we did after 08, 09. But this is a very slow moving industry, and that slow movement has served the industry well. I always crack up when someone new to the industry talks about the dinosaurs in automotive, right? That whatever, okay, and the pile of dead, movers and shakers is over there because, it's been a very profitable industry, a very forgiving industry. You could be a mediocre dealer for years and years, and even today, and still make money. And there's no reason to go rushing headfirst into a lot of things. I think online buying is going to be about 15%, but not more. I don't think it's going to, get to 20, 25% for 10 years or more. So I think 5 years is going to look a lot like today. There's my short answer.
Right on. There you have it, folks. So that is all the time we have for today. And as usual, we'll talk later.
We only host a well-respected. The vendor LexisNexis. We don't sell digital marketing. What you do? We inspect it with our DT vendor management.
Now more than ever, businesses need more efficient sales. That's why thousands of dealerships trust 4Eyes to help with things like automated inventory email updates and ensuring all of your leads get into the CRM. To try 4Eyes for free, visit 4eyes.io/dealertalk. That's 4eyes.io/dealertalk.